everyone. We are now on our 8th chapter where we will be talking about the Filipino values. Okay, let's start. Okay, values are universal, shared by all people. Okay, so values has that universal effect, which means it is shared by all people. What we call Filipino values are those given emphasis in the culture and tradition of the Filipinos. They shape character or ugaling Filipino. The study of cultural values belongs also to ethics. So we all know ethics is all about understanding what's considered good and bad behavior. So when we look at cultural values, we're trying to figure out what each group of people thinks is the right way to act and why they believe that. Okay, so next we have here some of the values of the Filipino. First is pananalig sa may kapal. So this comes from a belief that God is the supreme creator. Okay, and next we have love or pag-ibig. Love in English. Love is a universal value, but in the Filipino context, it often extends to a strong love and care for one's family and community. So we Filipinos tend to prioritize the well-being and happiness of our loved ones. Okay, next we have pakikipagkapwa or relating to others in English. So we Filipinos often value respectful interactions with our peers and neighbors. Yeah. Next, pagpapahalaga sa pamilya or valuing family in English. So of course, family is at the center of Filipino culture. So this values reflects the idea that family is a source of support, love, and our identity. Next is hiya or shame in English. So we Filipinos are often concerned with how our actions reflect on ourselves and our families, which can also influence our behavior. And finally, utang ng loob or debt of gratitude in English. So we Filipinos often feel a strong sense of obligation to repay the kindness and help we receive from others. Okay, so next we have here the Filipino moral ideal. Success is measured in terms of moral respectability. Di baling mahirap basta't may dangal expresses this noble aspiration. So success is not just about having money or material things, of course. It's also about being a good and honorable person. And the saying, di baling mahirap basta't may dangal, means that it's better to be poor as long as you have your honor and dignity. So in simple words, it emphasizes that being a decent and respected person is more important than being rich. Okay. Next, the ultimate expectation is for everybody to act the way a rational being ought to behave. More fundamental than magpakalalaki or magpakababae is the conceptual expectation of magpakatao. Okay, so the most important expectation for everyone is to act in a way that a rational, thinking person should behave. Okay, so being a decent and thoughtful person is more important than conforming to specific gender stereotypes. Okay. Such unfortunate individual is ostracized or dismissed as hayop or walang hiya, implying that only a brute can act so shamelessly. Okay, so when someone behaves in a very disrespectful way, they may be called names like this, like hayop or walang hiya. This suggests that in simple terms, it's a strong way of criticizing someone for behaving very badly. Okay. Next, values can be thought of in two ways. First is objective. So they are objective in the sense that they are things that are valuable and desirable. And on the other hand, we have here subjective. They are subjective in the sense that they presuppose a subject is a person who is valuing or experiencing such value. Okay, next we have positive and negative. So values are either positive or negative. So it is positive when they contribute to the development of proper attitude and behavior. So when values encourage people to have the right attitude and behave well, they're considered positive. In other words, they help us become better individuals and make good choices. And on the other hand, it is negative when they do not lend to the development of proper behavior, but instead lead to the corruption of behavior. Okay, so when values lead people to behave poorly or make bad decisions or choices, they're seen as negative. So these values can lead to corruption or make your behavior become even worse. So, in conclusion, positive values makes us better, while negative values, of course, makes us worse. Okay. Next, while values are objectively good, hence we call them values, their use or application by the subject, that is subjectively, may be an occasion for them to be twisted by misplaced motives. So in this situation, when people use these values, they might do it for their own personal reasons. And sometimes those reasons can be selfish or even wrong. So this means that while the values themselves are good, how people apply them can sometimes be influenced by their own not so good intentions. So ini na-enter na ini didihit aton gintatawag na kaplastikan. Like, yes, for example, you're being kind to other people, but you're only doing that in order to gain their favor or to take advantage of them. So it's not truly a selfless act. Okay? And Filipino values are often described as ambivalent. That is, they can either work for or against the person valuing. Okay, so wait. Okay, so Filipino values are sometimes described as ambivalent because they can have both positive and negative effects, depending on how they are used or applied. It's like having a tool that can be used for good or harm, depending on how a person chooses to use it. So these values can either help or hurt the person, depending on a situation and how they are applied. Okay. So another means of achieving SIR, or smooth interpersonal relations, is pakikisama. Okay. So pakikisama, this comes from the word sama, which means accompany or go along with. It also means giving in or yielding to the will of the leader on the majority so that the decision of the group becomes unanimous. Okay, let's proceed to the double standard mentality. Okay, the Filipino moral behavior is characterized as ambivalent, meaning that the Filipino is comfortable with a double standard mentality. Okay, so describing Filipino moral behavior as ambivalent means that it can be two-faced or have a double standard. In other words, some people in the Filipino culture might behave one way in public or with certain people and a different way in private or with others. This suggests that there can be a difference between how people act and what they believe, which is often seen as a double standard. Okay. According to Father Gorospe, Filipino values are ambivalent in the sense that they are a potential for good and evil. They may help or hinder personal and national development depending on how they are understood or practiced or lived. Okay, so Filipino values are considered ambivalent because they have the potential for both positive and negative effects. They can be used for good or bad, and whether they help or hinder personal and national development depends on how people understand and put them in practice. Okay. So, Father Garospe wonders whether this double standard is not in fact the result of our society's value system, which intrudes on the value system of the individual. Social expectation or pressure from family and community simply makes it difficult for the individual Filipino to act in accordance with his personal convictions. Okay, let's proceed to erroneous norms of morality. So erroneous means wrong, for your information. Filipinos judge what is right and wrong on the basis of, first, group centeredness or group thinking. So this is the mentality of the herd. So from the word herd, herd refers to a group of animals that stick together for safety and companionship, right? Uh, well, group centeredness or group thinking means that people are focused on what the group thinks or does, and they tend to follow the group's ideas or decisions, even if they might not agree with them individually. It's like going along with the crowd and not wanting to stand out or having different opinions. And next is shame and fear of the authority figure. So this is the don't be caught attitude. So this is when people are afraid of getting in trouble or facing consequences from someone in charge, like your boss or a teacher. So this fear of authority figures makes them avoid doing things that might get them into trouble or bring shame or embarrassment. So in simple words, it's about being cautious to avoid being caught and facing negative consequences. Okay, let's proceed to the reorientation of attitudes. So the solution of the moral ambiguity of the Filipinos depends largely on the attitude towards the problem itself. So there are three difficulties that must be overcome. So first, we have ignorance. Unaware of the inconsistency in his moral outlook, will not attempt to correct himself. Okay, so when someone is ignorant, it means that they don't know or understand something. So in this case, it's about not realizing that their moral beliefs or values are inconsistent or don't match up. Since they don't see inconsistency, they don't try to fix it or make their beliefs more consistent. So, ignorance here is about not recognizing a problem in their moral thinking. Okay, next, complacency. Complacency is the feeling of being comfortable with the present state of affairs. Okay. So, complacency means feeling okay or satisfied with how things are right now, without wanting or trying to make any changes or improvements. It's like being in a cozy spot and not wanting to move on. Not wanting to move or make things better, even if they could be. And finally, the third one is rationalization. So rationalization is the mental turning away from the real issues. Okay. So this is when a person's mind tries to come up with the reasons or excuses to avoid facing the true problems or issues. It's like making up explanations that sound reasonable but are actually used to avoid dealing with the real problems. Okay, so that's all for my part. Let's proceed to Mr. Earl for the continuation of our topic.
Moral commitment. Values are not acquired genetically, they are personal activated and life. They involve a commitment where one submits himself to the rational demands of his intellect for truth and the moral demands of the will to abide by what is good. Commitment implies responsibility. Characteristic of responsible person. A responsible person has the following qualities. One is a responsible person has the ability to differentiate between what is essential and accidental. Number two, a responsible person has the ability to internalize his values, core values of the new Filipino. Moral maturity is a process of conversion. It means shedding of the old self and putting on the new self. For the Filipino, this conversion begins with the fresh view of human dignity. On the basis of human dignity, Father Gorospi explored the potential of values which he considered core or central to the education and eventual transformation of the Filipino. Core values of new Filipino. These are core values are truth, love, and faith. In regards of truth, one should be ready to deny what is false and to accept what is true. In terms of love, one should be ready to choose not on the basis of what is pleasant or unpleasant, but solely on the basis of what is objectively good under the circumstances. There must be faith in the Almighty God who holds us in the palm of His hand. Number two, integrity. The word is stand for wholesomeness or completeness. It connotes perfection of the whole from perfection of its part. Integrity means honestly. It is the essential of self-respect. One should love himself and keep his dignity. Number three, hard work. Filipinos are hardworking. Many Filipinos have left their families and homes for work abroad of work, and yet then is need to develop the proper attitude towards work. When the materialistic goals become the primary and sole reason for working, work becomes an excuse for greed and contention. Along with poor attitude towards work, Filipino must be educated in the wise use of money. Number 4. Social justice required that we share our talent and material position with those who are unfortunate and poor. The concept that giving alms, donates, and assistance to the poor is only a demand of charity, and therefore voluntary must give way to the concept of social justice. It is founded on the principle that earthly goods belong to all men for them to share equally. Requires that we live only simple lives and that we should not flaunt our wealth, especially in the midst of such poverty and deprivation. That's all. Thank you for listening.